Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar on how to achieve continuous integration with Sauce Labs and Visual Studio Team Services with Jack Moxon, Sauce Labs Product Manager. Jack will showcase the Sauce Labs plugin for Visual Studio Team Services, which gives Visual Studio and TFS users access to the world's largest cloud for automated testing. My name is Christina Lau and I'll be moderating today's session. You can contact me in the chat panel or Q&A box if you're having any technical issues or questions. The Q&A panel is also the best place to submit questions you have for Jack as he goes through his presentation. Today's session will be about 30 minutes long, and we'll do a Q&A after with Jack to address all those submitted questions that you put into the Q&A panel. We are recording this session today. Once it's ready, you'll receive an email with the links to the recording and to the slides. With that, we're just going to go ahead with Jack. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Very excited to be here today to talk about our new plugin for Visual Studio Team Services as well as TFS. It's actually a very exciting time to be talking about tools around the Microsoft ecosystem. I think even just a couple of years ago, you probably wouldn't have heard a lot of people saying that. I noticed this morning that Visual Studio is announcing our tools for Visual Studio. There's tons of awesome new things going on right now with Visual Studio, and we're really excited to be one of those things. So before we dive in, I thought I would talk briefly about Sauce Labs, what we do, tell a fun little anecdote about continuous delivery, and then dive into the meat of the webinar, which is kind of Sauce Labs and Visual Studio Team Services. What does the plugin do? We'll do a nice demo, and then as Christina said, we'll go ahead and do some Q&A. So for those that are not familiar, Sauce Labs is the world's largest Selenium and Appium grid. We have a cloud-based platform that lets you run your Selenium and Appium tests on over 700 different browser and OS combinations, and that includes desktop, includes mobile, and that means real devices as well as simulators and emulators. So we've kind of run the whole gamut in terms of the types of testing you can do for functional kind of integration tests. You know, after unit tests, we can run that for you. A key proposition about running a cloud-based tool with Sauce Labs is that we're all about speed. So you can run, you know, hundreds or even thousands of tests concurrently in parallel on Sauce Labs, and that allows your build time to get very, very small. So we've had some folks come to us whose regression builds take, I don't know, 9 hours. We've had some come that takes 24 hours. When you parallelize your tests, you can run those in some cases less than 5 minutes. So a developer can you know, check in some code, grab a quick cup of coffee, and come back and they can know, can I deploy my code, or is there something that I need to fix? And meanwhile, not only have we got speed, but we're able to allow you to increase you know, the quality of your code, because you're actually testing against a lot of platforms. I can't tell you how many times we talk to people who are only testing on Chrome or Firefox and not testing on IE or Safari, let alone the plethora of mobile devices and operating systems that are out there. And so Sauce Labs lets you do all that. And by the way, we do it in a way that reduces costs. So you don't have to maintain and manage that grid. It's all handled by us in the cloud. And we'll talk about that in more detail. We've run over 400 million tests to date, so we have a lot of experience. And basically, we've got some of the best engineers in the world working on maintaining this Selenium grid so that you don't have to hire people to do that. So I thought I'd tell a fun story about the Gossamer Condor. This is a picture of Dr. Paul McCready. He was the winner of the Kremer Prize in 1977. And this is a story about continuous delivery. So in, I think, the late 50s, someone named Kremer, who was a rich billionaire type, he was very interested in a number of different scientific endeavors, but one of them was he wanted to see if someone could build a human-powered airplane. And so he said, you know, I have this prize, it's $1 million, for the first team that can put together this plane. And many teams tried, and for about 18 years, from the late 50s until the late 70s, no one was successful. And then in I think 1976, Paul McCready came along and realized that the problem wasn't building a human-powered plane. That wasn't the problem he needed to solve. That was a red herring. What he actually needed to do was build a plane that he could rebuild in a day. And that was going to solve it, because what was happening was all the other teams were doing lots of design work. They were then spending months building the plane, and then they were doing tests, and they would run a test and it would crash, and it would have been a year, it would crash, and then they would start the process over again. So their release cycle was basically one time per year, which is kind of laughable today when you think about software, but unfortunately, a lot of organizations are actually not that far from that, and they're doing a monthly release or every 2 weeks. McCready said, if we can test this faster, we can iterate faster, and we can win. So what he did was he re-architected the plane. It was built out of aluminum and very, very easy to construct materials, and he got to the point where he could rebuild the plane within about 3 hours. So they were doing like 3 or 4 tests a day instead of doing 1 a year, and within 18 months, they had won the prize. And it had taken everyone else 18 years, and they were nowhere close. So this is just kind of a fun anecdote about continuous delivery, and I think it's something that is very important to transfer over to the software industry. And it's something that's happening all over the place, and everybody wants to get to continuous delivery. And there are some new tools out there, like, for example, Visual Studio Team Services and Sauce Labs that can help with that. So with the Sauce Labs plugin for VSTS and Team Foundation Server, you can now run your Sauce Labs tests as a part of a build. So lots of folks have pipelines that they're building in TFS and in Visual Studio. With this plugin, it makes it seamless for you to automatically kick off your tests. So it handles things like authentication. It also handles something which we call Sauce Connect. So as a cloud service, you may be testing a pre-production application that's stored behind the firewall. And Sauce Connect is a TLS tunnel that is provided by Sauce Labs, which allows you to test your application that's behind the firewall without having to expose it publicly. And so it's sort of a secure connection that handles that for you. And this plugin is going to launch that and stop it so that the tunnel's open for a brief period of time during your build, and then it closes down. And we'll show that during the demo. The other thing that the plugin and the integration between Sauce Labs and Visual Studio allows is massive parallelization. So in the demo, I think I'll show running about 25 to 35 tests in parallel. But we have customers at Sauce Labs who are using this to run hundreds or even thousands of tests in parallel. And that makes Selenium lightning quick. I think it's something that people have experienced in the past. Maybe some of you have seen in the past that Selenium can be a little bit slow and cumbersome. But when you're able to thread it out across all these different nodes, it becomes very fast. And again, the browser coverage. So this plugin allows people to run on Chrome, Firefox. We have over 700 different platforms. We also have real devices that you can test against in an automated way, as well as emulators and simulators. And then finally, I'll show in the demo, we have some awesome tools for debugging, right? So you're running your tests, and maybe 100 pass, but 4 fail. You want to find out, why can't I deploy? What's the issue here? And Sauce Labs has tools that makes that very easy. So you can watch a video of the test running. You can see the screenshots. You can see the logs. So it's pretty clear, and I'll show in the demo in kind of a silly example how quickly someone can use this plugin and use Sauce Labs to quickly identify issues in their application, fix them, and run another build. So with all that preamble, it's now time to go to the demo. So hopefully everyone can see my screen now. So this is the Sauce for Visual Studio Team Services plugin. It's in the Visual Studio Marketplace. I have a very simple project in Visual Studio Team Services that you see here. I also have a set of Java, JUnit, Selenium tests that are stored on GitHub, which I want to run as a part of my build process. So every time I make a change to my code, I want to kick off these tests and run them. And these are some very kind of standard, simple Selenium tests. For example, it's going to log into kind of a guinea pig page that we built here on Sauce Labs and input some text and submit it. And we're going to see if that works. So to get started, all I have to do is go into the build stage here in Visual Studio. And I can create a build. So I'll start a new build just for this webinar. And Visual Studio has a bunch of templates which are very useful, but I'm going to go with this empty one to keep it very simple and straightforward. As you saw, GitHub is where we're going to store our source code, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to go to a default, and I'm going to create this new tool. Now, the first thing I want to do is set up my repository. So I've already pre-authenticated here, and many of you will already have this set up. And I'm going to select the Java JUnit Selenium, and this is going to link us to this GitHub repo that I was showing you before. I'm going to hit save, and we'll say webinar demo. So we see it there now. So hopefully that should be there. Okay. So now to get the Sauce Labs. So I've already pre-installed this on my machine, but I can go into the test, and I just click. There's two steps that you want to add, two build steps. The first is called the Sauce Labs configuration, and the second is called Sauce Labs stop Sauce Connect. You want to add both of those. Now, since we're running with Maven, with Java, we're going to want to use Maven as well. So I'm going to add a Maven build step, and this is going to actually handle the launching of my tests. And all I have to do is here tell it to find this pom.xml. So the Sauce plugin. So it's very simple. So the first thing it does is handles authentication. So you can store your username and access key in Visual Studio so that your tests will know, where to run and with which account. The second thing I mentioned, which was that Sauce Connect tunnel. So again, Sauce Connect is a TLS tunnel that is going to open a temporary connection between my application, which is behind a firewall, and Sauce Labs, so that we can do these browser tests or these mobile tests, and then we're going to close it down. So the first thing I'm going to do is select this, and launching Sauce Connect with this plugin is as simple as toggling this on and off. There's no need to download. It's very simple. Let's say continue on air. Maven, that's all set up. And then at the end, I want to stop Sauce Connect. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay. So everything should be good here. I can click Save. Now, there is one more thing I want to do. So I want to enable continuous integration. So this is kind of the cool thing about Visual Studio Team Services. So I can go here and I can tell it to run a build on every change to my branch. So this branch, I believe, is called test output to VSTS. Okay. So this should save that. Okay. So now whenever I make a change, it should kick off a build. But right now I'm going to show you guys some failing tests. So we expect that these tests are going to fail. As you can see, I've just got this wrong email input here in my test. And so we'll see what happens when something fails. So I'll queue my build. And again, it's called test. And we should launch something here in just a second. So the build is getting started here, and you can see that the build is already starting Sauce Connect. It's going to show us some of the logs there. While we're waiting for that, we can go to the Sauce Labs dashboard. And so this is where you can see all of your test data as well as tests running in Sauce Labs. So you can see I've got a tunnel that's being activated. So this was just started by the plugin. I didn't have to do anything. I can go to my automated test page, and you can see there's 24 concurrent VMs running all the tests. So I only had 2 tests in there, but I wanted to test against a number of different browser OS combinations. You can see here I'm running against Windows XP on IE8. I'm running on the Windows 8 against IE10. I'm running on Mac with Safari, older versions, different versions. And you can see that some are already starting to fail. And that's what we expect. And so this is where kind of the awesome nature of the plugin and Sauce Labs comes in. So you can see that it stopped. So I go back to my build. I see, okay, something broke here. Let's look at build 70. So I ran 36 tests. 9 of them failed, and 27 passed. So I can look at a detailed report here, and I can see some more information about them. And I can see, oh, there's an error message here. Expected something, but I got the wrong thing. Well, let's look at that a little more closely. I can go into Sauce Labs, and I can look at the test details page. And this is a pretty neat tool about Sauce Labs. The first thing I can see is a screenshot that shows me wrong email at gmail.com was input. That wasn't what we expected. That's very easy. And I can scroll through and see lots of other screenshots if I want to. Now, this test was so simple. That's really the only relevant one. I also have the ability to watch a video of the test, and I can watch it running live or after the fact. And again, this is such a simple test, we may hardly see anything at all because it was so fast. But you might be having a longer test, like a login flow or something like that, and it'll be very useful to watch what exactly happened. I also have logs. I have Selenium logs, server logs, and different things that I can do to find out which commands were issued and where things broke, as well as some various different bits of metadata. So I can download the video and I can store them in Visual Studio as a ticket or something like that if I want to do that. So again, here's the video running, very simple. You'll also note that I ran it on a bunch of different browsers, which I mentioned, and I ran it in parallel. So if I go back to Visual Studio, I can see that this build only took like 48 seconds. And if I had run those serially, each one, it would have taken quite a bit longer. So, okay, that's what happens when it's broken. So we've seen that there's the wrong expected email. So I think because I'm cheating here, I kind of know what the problem is. And I can go into this GitHub page, and I can actually just put the correct thing in here. I can make a commit. And we can go back to our build. We can go to the webinar demo, and we can run another build. Okay, so we'll start another build here in a second, and we should see everything pass. So our tunnel's getting started. And it's queued here because I think someone else might be running something at the moment. Let's cancel that one, and we'll move on to this one, which should run now. So while that's going, are there any questions, Christina, that we should look at? Yeah, so the first question that came in, which was, can we do this with TFS and C# and unit Selenium tests? Absolutely. So I've shown an example using Visual Studio Team Services in the cloud, just because that's easy for the demo. And I've shown it using JUnit and Java, also because that's fairly easy for the demo. But the beauty of Sauce Labs and Selenium is you can run Selenium tests in any language, any framework, everything is supported. Another awesome thing is, that, and this is pretty recent, Microsoft has made it possible to run plugins like this on TFS. So I know a lot of people are using TFS or an on-prem version of VSTS, and it's now possible to do that with Sauce Labs. So we can see that it's running. Again, we've got 24 VMs running in parallel, and things should pass as we expect. And that should happen in just a second. We have another question about the tunnel, so Sauce Connect. And this is definitely a pretty amazing feature and something that lots of enterprises use with Sauce Labs today. The question was, is there any dependency on the IT infrastructure team to open up ports for the tunnel? Yes. So the IT infrastructure team would just have to open up outbound connections on port 443. You can read a lot more detail about Sauce Connect on our documentation page, and there's a ton of information about exactly what steps they'll need to do. But it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy, and it's something that they do once, and then the tunnel can be dynamically started and stopped anytime. You won't need to go to your IT infrastructure team every single time you want to run a build. And as you saw in the plugin, the tunnel starts and stops each time, so that connection is fairly brief. Okay, so it looks like we had a build succeed. We can walk through and we can see that this time all 36 of our tests pass. I can go back to the Sauce dashboard. I can see them here. Again, I can confirm, okay, yep, successful tests. And I covered all the browsers that I wanted to, which is pretty awesome. Returning to the demo. So just wanted to reiterate, with this plugin, you get access to all these browser and OS combos that you didn't have before. We have real mobile devices as well as emulators. You don't have to maintain any of that. We saw in the demo that we ran 24 tests and it took about 48 seconds. We've got customers running thousands in parallel to get their build under 5 minutes. So every time a developer issues a pull request, they're running these tests, and they don't have to wait very long. If you start to see that build creep up to 15, 30, an hour, you really slow down the productivity, and developers hate that. So this is a great way to get developers running tests frequently, and it helps build a culture of testing. So I think a lot of people, as they move towards continuous delivery, have noticed that one of the major bottlenecks to achieving that is, how do I build a culture of testing and creating automated tests? And if your test infrastructure is flaky, if it's unreliable, if it doesn't have the platforms you want, if it takes a long time, it's really, really hard to build that culture. And with Sauce Labs, you can do that. And kind of a best practice that we're seeing emerge with many of our enterprise users is running builds on every pull request, and they're able to save money by doing that. So I know we had a couple questions, Christina, that we've answered. Are there any others that came across the transom?
This one's pretty specific, but someone said, we have a framework where we're coded with Java and using Selenium WebDriver. Can we connect the TFS with our framework?
Absolutely, yes. So you can use TFS to use this plugin. You can actually go to the marketplace today for Visual Studio, and you can download the extension there, and it will work with any Selenium or Appium language and framework.
Okay. Then people are just wondering, how do they get access to the plugin, and is there any cost associated to using it?
Great question. So to get access to the plugin is very simple. Just go to the Visual Studio Marketplace, and you'll see a kind of a landing page where you can read more about the plugin. You can also download it. And Christina, I think, can post a link in the WebEx session that is a direct link to our application. Otherwise, you can go to the Visual Studio Marketplace and find it pretty easily there under Visual Studio Team Services. I think it's in the test category. And in terms of cost, no, it's absolutely free. So to use this plugin doesn't cost anything. You just need a Sauce Labs account, and if you have that account, you can use this plugin.
And I think you might have just said this, but as you were talking, somebody wrote this in, so I'm just going to clarify. People are saying, what exactly is the plugin? They didn't understand that clearly.
Oh, yeah. So to make it clear, so the plugin just is kind of a connector between Sauce Labs and Visual Studio Team Services. So it does a number of things. The first thing it's going to do is handle authentication. So you have, obviously, credentials from Sauce Labs that you need to use in order to run your tests against all the platforms that we talked about and get all the value out of Sauce. So through Visual Studio, you can actually authenticate directly through the plugin. The plugin also manages Sauce Connect, so it stops and starts that tunnel. And then you can see that the test information is reported back into Visual Studio Team Services. And in terms of roadmap for this product, that's the next thing that we'll be continuing to build out. So right now it's pretty simple, which it just kind of says which tests are available, which tests passed and failed, and you can go to the Sauce Labs dashboard and you can see all the rich information around videos and screenshots. In the next iteration of the plugin, what we're going to do is continue to make that an even more seamless integration between the two.
Great, and I just shared the link that you gave me to everybody in the chat window, so you can find it there.
Great.
Next question is, does this work with on-prem versions of VSTS or just cloud-based versions?
It works with everything. So you can use the cloud-based Visual Studio Team Services. You can download and run that yourself. You can also run TFS with the plugin. It works across the board.
Next question, if I'm not using Sauce Labs, is there any plugins to connect to TFS?
If you're not using Sauce Labs, are there any plugins to connect with TFS? I'm not sure I understand the question, but yeah, I think there are a host of other plugins that are available for TFS now. I think this is a pretty new capability for Microsoft that allows you to create, allows partners to create plugins basically. So without understanding the question, I think the answer is yes.
Okay, sounds good. Last question I see in here, I think you covered this, but might as well ask again. Can you explain how I can test against a firewalled pre-production application?
Absolutely, yeah. So this comes back to Sauce Connect, which we talked a little bit about before. It's a TLS tunnel that basically opens up a tunnel between your firewall application, as you mentioned, that may be pre-production, and Sauce Labs. So Sauce Labs is kind of an interesting service in that it is cloud-based, but it isn't we're not hosting your application. It's actually a client-based cloud. So it's just a bunch of like browsers that we can use to hit your application and run tests to verify. And so you're not ever actually uploading anything to Sauce Labs. You're just creating this tunnel for a brief period, Sauce Connect, and we can. There's some documentation you can read about that if you want a lot more detail. But we're basically building that tunnel, running the tests through that encrypted tunnel, and then shutting it down at the end. And that's what the plugin manages for you. So I think you can see in the demo, you just click a checkbox essentially, and it does all that for you.
Okay. I think with that, we are through all the questions. Actually, one just popped up. What types of authentication are supported in the tunnel? Basic?
It's a TLS tunnel.
Okay.
I don't know which types of authentication, but again, if you go to the Sauce Labs docs, I think you should be able to find all that you need to about there.
Okay, somebody just told us that they're getting an error when they're trying to download and install the plugin on TFS. I don't know.
They can reach out to me.
Okay.
This is a fairly new thing that Microsoft, I think, just released it maybe last week. So we'd love to hear about that and take a look. Happy to take a look.
Okay, so they should email you at?
They can email me at jack@saucelabs.com.
Okay, sounds good. All right, well, with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Just wanted to let you know that we are going to be posting the recording and the slides on the Sauce Labs blog later this week. You'll also receive an email with both the recording and slides tomorrow. And if you're planning to come to Microsoft Build in San Francisco at the end of this month, stop by the Sauce Labs booth to learn more about VSTS services and the plugin, and you can meet the Sauce Labs team. Well, thanks, Jack, for the presentation today.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Bye.